My name is Madison Clark. I'm 40, and the last time my father looked me in the eyes without regret, I was 12 years old and still naive enough to believe his stories about honor and family pride. That irony wasn't lost on me as I sat in the farthest corner of the Houston Community Center, quietly watching my cousin Jessica's retirement party unfold like a well-practiced Broadway show. Balloons, banners, sparkling cider. Jessica always did have a way of making her life look so perfectly framed. 23 years of teaching elementary school, and now she was a local celebrity, the pride of the Clarks, the one who'd never stepped out of line. In our family, Jessica was the gold standard for what a respectable woman should be: selfless, predictable, always available for baby showers, PTA meetings, and casseroles for sick neighbors. There was a slideshow running on a rented projector, showing photos of her surrounded by smiling students, or on field trips to the Houston Zoo, her arms full of paper-make volcanoes and hand-drawn cards. All around me, people cheered, hugged, and dabbed tears from their eyes, as if this were the end of a Hollywood movie and not just another chapter in Jessica's very safe, very small, very celebrated life. Meanwhile, I adjusted my position on a squeaky metal folding chair, suddenly very aware of how awkward civilian clothes felt after so many years in uniform. Jeans, a plain black sweater, old sneakers, nothing to attract attention. Nothing to spark questions I wasn't ready to answer. Sometimes I wondered if I would ever get used to dressing this way, or if I'd always feel out of place at a normal of family gatherings, wearing my civilian self like a borrowed coat. Madison. My name, delivered like an accusation and a greeting all at once. My Aunt Barbara approached, gliding through the crowd with that same strained smile I'd known since childhood, the one that said we're family, but also you're not really one of us. Aunt Barbara wore a powder blue pantsuit and too much perfume, the kind that lingered long after she left a room. I braced myself, forcing a polite smile. I didn't expect to see you here, Barbara began, her tone light but her eyes already scanning me head to toe, taking mental inventory. Jessica invited me, I said, keeping my voice casual, my gaze drifting to where my cousin was accepting another bouquet of flowers from another grateful parent. Jessica wore a bright coral dress and a sash that read a best teacher ever. Of course she did. How thoughtful of her, Aunt Barbara replied, her smile tightening as she clutched her purse. Still between jobs, I assume? The words hung in the air between us, invisible but thick as smoke. Still between jobs, it was Clark family code for a still a disappointment. You still haven't married, and still haven't produced grandchildren for your poor father. A little wave of shame lapped at the edges of my composure. It had taken me years to stop letting that shame drag me under. Something like that, I replied, unwilling to give her more. Aunt Barbara let out a theatrical laugh that made several people nearby turn to look. Well, at least you showed up, she said, as if attendance itself was the only test of loyalty that mattered. Your father's been telling everyone you can't seem to hold down a real job. Military and all that. She said a military with a little wrinkle of her nose, like it was a word she'd only ever seen on TV. I knew exactly what a military and all that it meant to my family. In their minds, I was probably a low-level clerk who got kicked out for being incompetent, or maybe I cleaned police squad rooms at night or handed out traffic tickets in some rough part of town. Certainly nothing glamorous or worth talking about at cocktail hour. Just then, I heard my father's voice, unmistakable in its volume and bravado. Roger Clark, 68, retired insurance adjuster and the undisputed master of small talk that doubled as humiliation. Madison doesn't like to talk about work, he said, stepping behind me and placing a heavy hand on my shoulder, a gesture meant to look affectionate for anyone watching, but which landed with the weight of a boulder. "We're just proud she's found something, you know?" His tone was perfect, a little too loud, a little too forced, with just enough fake pride to let everyone know whatever I was doing, it wasn't really worth discussing. "Dad," I acknowledged, nodding. He didn't look at me, instead scanning the crowd. "Your sister's here somewhere. Samantha brought the kids. They were asking about you earlier, wondering what their Aunt Madison does for work. I told them you help people." Which isn't exactly a lie. The help people a narrative was for polite company, something vague and unimpressive, the kind of job you took when you couldn't handle anything too important or demanding. Crossing guard. Soup kitchen volunteer. The family late bloomer. As I took a deep breath, Jessica appeared beside us, her hair pinned back and cheeks flushed from the excitement. She looked like she'd just walked out of a Pottery Barn catalogue. Perfect, approachable, immediately likable. "Madison, I'm so glad you could make it," she said, pulling me into a quick, vanilla-scented hug. "I wasn't sure you'd be able to get away from wherever you are these days." Before I could answer, Aunt Barbara jumped in. "Oh, you know, she's still bouncing around, looking for her place in the world." Jessica's smile flickered, something like pity, but gentler. "Well, everyone's on a different timeline, aren't we? I'm just glad you're here." Different timeline. That was her way of saying some of us figure things out. Others, well, not so much. My phone buzzed at my hip, but I ignored it. Another reminder that my real life was always somewhere just out of reach at these family events. "Congratulations on your retirement, Jess," I managed. 23 years is a hell of an achievement." She beamed. "Thank you. I keep thinking about what's next, you know? Maybe travel, maybe some volunteering. I've been so focused on the classroom, I almost forgot there's a world out there." Before I could answer, my Uncle Doug appeared with a beer in each hand and that same smirk he'd worn to every family event since I was 18. "Projects," he repeated after Jessica, handing one beer to my father. "That's a nice way to put it. Madison here is still figuring out what she wants to do with her life." "Doug, please," Jessica said, warningly. "What?" "It's just facts. Some people are late bloomers." He shrugged, taking a long drink. "Nothing wrong with that. At least you've got job security, right? Even if it's not exactly prestigious." The word security stung more than I wanted to admit. Like I was barely hanging on, not standing strong on my own 2 feet. My phone buzzed again. This time I caught a flash of the caller ID. Work, real work. I needed to answer, but not here, not with all these eyes and judgments. "I should probably," I started, but my father cut me off. "Stay. Jessica's about to give her speech. Would be rude to leave now." So I stayed, the outsider in her own family, in a city that didn't quite feel like home, sitting quietly in my chair while the rest of them cheered for the golden child. I wondered if they'd ever see me for who I was, or if I'd always just be the cautionary tale at their dinner tables. Jessica's voice rang out through the hall as she took the microphone for her retirement speech, her tone warm and practiced. The crowd's laughter and applause swelled around her. I tried to disappear into the folding chair, hands gripping the cold metal edge, wishing I could shrink small enough to slide beneath the table. Sometimes I wondered if the real reason I always felt like a stranger at these gatherings was because the version of me my family saw, the unreliable dreamer, the awkward tomboy, The girl who ran off air had never truly existed. Jessica thanked her colleagues, her students, her family, everyone but me, it seemed. Our eyes met for a moment across the room. She offered me a real smile, the kind that almost made me forget every passive-aggressive comment I'd endured since walking in. Then her gaze moved on, and I was just another extra in the background of her story. After the speech, the hall filled with chatter and the clinking of coffee cups. People drifted into smaller groups. I watched my family the way I might watch a crime scene, looking for motives, for the hidden dynamics beneath the polite surface. My father was deep in conversation near the punch bowl, holding court about insurance and how things used to be done right. Aunt Barbara had gathered a circle around her, showing off photos on her phone, each story beginning with, "You remember Madison, don't you?" and ending in forced laughter. I gravitated toward the back wall, half hoping to disappear. That's when my younger sister, Samantha, found me, balancing a paper plate stacked with cake, her little son Tyler tugging at her sleeve. "Hey, stranger." She plopped into the seat beside me, her voice low, conspiratorial. "Long time no see. You're a tough one to track down, you know." Samantha had always taken the safe path: college, marriage at 25, 2 kids by 30. Her hair was always perfectly straightened, her nails painted the color of oatmeal. She never meant to hurt me, but there was a kind of bewildered kindness in her eyes, as if she was always trying to solve the riddle of her big sister's life. "How are the kids?" I asked, watching Tyler chase after a stray balloon, nearly crashing into a display of cupcakes. "Busy. Tyler starts first grade this fall. Emma turned 3 last month. They keep asking about you, when you'll come visit, what you do for work." She shrugged, embarrassed. I never really know what to tell them. The urge to laugh, cry, and scream all hit me at once. "What do you want to tell them?" I asked softly. Samantha hesitated. "I wish I could tell them the truth. I know you're not just floating around. But Mom and Dad, everyone, makes it sound like you're barely scraping by. But you seem different. You always walk in here so confident." Confident. The word stung, only because I knew how often it was a mask. Before I could answer, my phone buzzed again, persistent, insistent. 3 missed calls, 2 texts, and a notification from a number that could only mean one thing: work needed me. The real world, the one where people's lives sometimes hung in the balance, was calling. "I need to take this," I said abruptly, standing. "I'll be back in a bit." "Madison, just," Samantha started, but I was already threading my way through the tables, out the side exit and into the humid Houston evening. The parking lot was nearly full, cars and SUVs, school stickers on bumpers, the scent of barbecue drifting in from somewhere nearby. I found a spot at the edge of the lot, near the basketball courts, and dialed the missed number, the adrenaline already starting to thrum in my veins. "Detective Clark," I said, my voice falling automatically into command. "Detective Clark, it's Lieutenant Rios. We've got a situation." The voice on the other end was clipped, steady, and utterly familiar. "Local PD just called in. 8-year-old girl, missing from her front yard. Witnesses say a blue sedan, partial plates. They're requesting you, specifically." A beat of silence as the world shifted beneath my feet. Years of work, cases I'd solved, heartbreaks I'd carried, nights I'd spent combing through evidence and praying I'd find a clue before it was too late, all of it surged forward, crystal clear. I'm 20 minutes out, EI said, my mind already leaping ahead, fitting pieces together. Get the full case file to my inbox, and have the on-scene supervisor call me direct. And Rios, don't let the media anywhere near the family. Not yet. Yes, Mum. I stood in the parking lot for a moment longer, the weight of the call settling over me like an old coat, familiar, heavy, not unwelcome. Someone's little girl was missing. Someone's world had just shattered. And it was my job, my privilege, to try to put it right. Inside, I could still hear the laughter and the distant chorus of "If or she's a jolly good fellow." I forced myself to breathe, to gather my scattered thoughts. As I turned to go back inside, I caught my reflection in the dark glass of a minivan, hair pulled back, dark eyes, face set with a kind of determination my family always mistook for stubbornness. It was time to go. Time to be who I really was, whether or not they ever saw it. As I slipped back into the edge of the party, my sister intercepted me. "Everything okay?" she whispered, her voice lined with worry. "You look different. Like you're about to do something important." I offered her a tight smile, one I perfected over the years. "Just work, Sam. Just work." Before I could say more, Tyler darted over, face sticky with frosting. "Aunt Madison, Mommy says you're a police lady. Do you have a gun?" Samantha's cheeks went pink. "Tyler, that's not polite." But I was already kneeling down to his level, pulling out my badge. The gold shield gleamed under the fluorescent lights, the word "a detective" clear enough for even a 6-year-old to read. "Yep," EI said, quietly but firmly. "I'm a detective. I help people. I try to keep them safe." Tyler's eyes grew wide, and he grinned, before racing off after his sister. But Samantha was silent, staring at my badge like it was a foreign object. "Detective," she whispered, the word tasting strange on her tongue. "Yer," EI said, softer this time. "That's me." And in that moment, for just a heartbeat, I let myself hope that maybe, just maybe, she was beginning to see me for who I really was. I left Samantha by the dessert table, her eyes still fixed on my badge like she'd just glimpsed an artifact from a world she never expected me to inhabit. By now, my phone was vibrating in my pocket with every step, messages stacking up, the outside world refusing to wait while my family clung to old misunderstandings. The hallway outside the event room was lined with faded photos, local Little League teams, 4th of July picnics, faded banners from some forgotten PTA bake sale. I ducked into a quiet alcove, the voices from the party now a dull background hum. I checked my phone, 3 missed calls, 2 new texts, and a growing sense of urgency gnawing at my composure. I dialed back, waiting as the line clicked twice before being picked up. "Clark," EI said, my voice settling into that calm, no-nonsense cadence that seemed to materialize whenever the job called for it. On the other end, Lieutenant Rios wasted no time. "Madison, here's what we have. 8-year-old girl, Amy Parker, taken from her front yard less than 2 hours ago. Blue sedan, partial plates. Witnesses say it was quick, maybe less than a minute. Local units have already set up a grid search, but the parents are a mess, the media's starting to sniff around, and the chief wants you on site ASAP." "Where exactly?" I asked, memorizing every detail, the rest of the world narrowing into a single point of focus. "Southside, near Shepherd and War, just off the 610 loop. Amy's mother is with officers, but the father's gone out looking on his own." Text me the address. I'm on my way, EI said, then paused. Has anyone notified the feds? Not yet. Do you want? Not yet, EI interrupted. Let's see what we can do in the first hour. Tell the unseen supervisor I want all units checking traffic cams and local gas stations for that blue sedan. If anyone's got doorbell cam footage, pull it now. And Rios, keep the press off my back for at least 30 minutes. He didn't bother with a goodbye. He knew how these things worked. As I hung up, the weight of my civilian clothes felt suddenly heavier, as if the sweater and jeans had become a disguise I no longer needed. I walked quickly toward the front doors, weaving past clusters of family, their voices fading behind me. No one stopped me. My father was deep in conversation with Uncle Doug, Aunt Barbara was gossiping with her friends about someone's failed marriage, and Jessica was surrounded by a small crowd of teachers and former students. For a moment, I let myself imagine slipping out unnoticed, but as I reached the exit, I heard my name. Madison. Jessica's voice, half breathless, caught me as I pushed the glass door open. I turned, managing a weary smile. Hey, Jess. She moved closer, her coral dress swishing, her retirement sash now slightly askew. Are you leaving already? The cake's about to be served. Duty calls, I said, keeping my voice light, but something in my tone must have tipped her off. She reached for my hand, her expression shifting. Is it serious? Something with the department? I nodded. Yeah. I can't talk about it, but I have to go. Jessica's eyes flicked from my face to the badge still clipped to my belt, no longer hidden for the sake of family peace. For the first time, I saw not just sympathy or pity in her eyes, but something else. Respect, maybe. Or at least curiosity. You know, she said quietly, when we were kids, I always thought you'd be the one to leave town and do something important. I just didn't realize it would take you so far from us. I let her words settle for a moment. Sometimes I didn't either, I admitted. She squeezed my hand. Be safe, okay? I nodded once, then slipped out the door, feeling the Texas humidity close around me like a wet blanket. The community center's parking lot was a patchwork of minivans and pickup trucks, all parked at odd angles. My old Ford Explorer sat near the back, its faded blue paint and dented bumper a far cry from the shiny sedans that lined the front row. I climbed in, the familiar scent of leather and spilled coffee instantly grounding me. This car had been my companion on late-night stakeouts and early morning raids. It had carried me home after both triumphs and defeats. Here, at least, I knew who I was. As I pulled out onto the road, my mind shifted into work mode. I replayed everything Rios had told me. 8-year-old girl, front yard, blue sedan. The patterns were all too familiar. In my years with Houston PD, I'd learned that the first hours after a child's disappearance were the most critical, the window where hope was still alive, before the world hardened into facts and loss. I tapped the hands-free button on my dash and called the unseen supervisor. This is Detective Clark. ETA 15 minutes. Give me a quick sit rep. Sergeant Nguyen's voice was crisp, businesslike. Victim's mother is stable, but in shock. Farther left the scene, trying to find the car himself. Officers are tracking his phone. 2 witnesses so far, a neighbor across the street and a postal worker. Both saw the car but couldn't get a clear look at the driver. We're canvassing the block now. No sign of forced entry or struggle. Send me any footage as soon as you get it. Lock down every exit from the neighborhood and get uniforms checking nearby hotels and motels for anyone matching Amy's description. We can't afford to miss a single lead. Yes, Mum. I hung up, heart pounding. I glanced at myself in the rearview mirror, noticing the lines around my eyes, the tightness in my jaw. Sometimes I wondered if my family would even recognize this version of me, the one who lived for the chase, who thrived on the edge of disaster, who spent holidays running down suspects instead of roasting turkeys. Red light. I drummed my fingers on the steering wheel. My thoughts flickered back to Samantha, to her quiet hope that I was doing more with my life than anyone realized. If only she knew how often I thought of calling her after a long shift, just to hear a familiar voice. If only any of them knew how much it cost me to keep this world separate from theirs. The light turned green, and I pressed the gas, the city rushing past in a blur of neon and brick. Out here, I wasn't the family disappointment. I was Detective Clark. I was the one who stood between the innocent and the nightmare. And no matter what my family thought, I knew exactly what that meant. The drive from the community centre to Shepherd and War was a blur, a 15-minute sprint through the heart of Houston, siren off, lights off, invisible. My mind cycled through protocol and patterns, reviewing every abduction I'd worked, every child we'd lost, every child we brought home. The city outside was alive with Friday night energy, families heading to restaurants, kids on skateboards, someone's music thumping from a car window. No one here knew the storm brewing just a few blocks away, in one ordinary yard on a tree-lined street. I pulled onto Amy Parker's block just as a patrol car was backing out of a neighbor's driveway. The whole neighborhood looked frozen, porch lights on, blinds twitching, people clustered in anxious knots at the ends of driveways. Yellow police tape marked the edge of the Parkers' front yard, cutting off the world from the scene of the worst day in one family's life. Sergeant Nguyen greeted me at the curb, his face drawn and serious. "Detective Clark," he said, handing me a tablet with the initial report. I scanned the notes as we walked toward the house. "Mother's inside?" He nodded. "We've got Officer Reyes with her, keeping her calm as best he can. The father's cell pinged about a mile from here. He's still searching on foot." "And the witnesses?" Nguyen pointed to a woman wrapped in a Houston Astros blanket, flanked by 2 officers and a worried-looking teenager. "Mrs. Downing and her daughter. Saw most of it, at least the car. We're trying to get a better plate number." I knelt beside the woman, my tone gentle but focused. "Mrs. Downing, I'm Detective Clark. Can you tell me again exactly what you saw?" Her hands shook as she spoke, voice barely above a whisper. It was so fast. Amy was playing with her jump rope, and then the blue car just stopped. A man got out, said something to her. I couldn't hear. Then she was gone. The car took off toward the highway. "Did you see his face?" She hesitated. He wore a baseball cap, I think. White, maybe blue. He moved like he knew what he was doing, like this wasn't the first time. I pressed for details, then thanked her, promising that every officer here was doing everything possible. As I stood, the teenager offered her phone. I got a picture, as she said, her hand trembling. "It's not great, but..." I scrolled through the blurry images, my heart speeding up. There, the blue sedan, Texas plates, one number clear, the rest a little smudged. It was something. I turned to Nguyen. Send this to traffic and citywide plate readers. Check every major road. This guy isn't invisible. He nodded, already relaying the order on his radio. Inside the Parker home, the atmosphere was heavy, half hope, half heartbreak. Amy's mother sat at the kitchen table, hands knotted together, staring at the clock above the stove. Officer Reyes caught my eye and nodded, quietly excusing himself. Mrs. Parker, I began softly, sitting across from her. I know this is the hardest thing you've ever faced, but I need to ask a few more questions. Anything you remember could help. She nodded, tears streaking her face, but her voice was strong. He didn't hurt her. Not at first. He just smiled, said her name, like he knew her. But I'd never seen him before. Amy wouldn't go with a stranger. She's shy. She wouldn't. We'll find her, I said, not as a promise, but as a lifeline. Every abduction is a puzzle. The patterns, the footprints, the small mistakes that mean everything. I asked about recent strangers, new friends, anything odd, a new handyman, a package left on the porch, someone loitering on the street. We went through the questions together, Mrs. Parker answering as best she could through tears. As I stood to leave, she caught my wrist. Please bring my baby home. That single plea weighed more than 1,000 family expectations ever could. I walked out onto the porch, mind racing, and updated the team. We have a partial plate, maybe an ID on the cap. The abductor knew her name. Focus on anyone with a prior connection to the Parkers, ex-employees, family friends, neighbors. And get a bolo out on every blue sedan matching that description in Harris County. Nguyen relayed the orders, officers springing into motion. I stood on the sidewalk, breathing in the thick Houston air, letting the adrenaline settle just enough for my instincts to take over. My phone vibrated, a text from Samantha. You left so quickly. Is everything okay? I hope you're safe. Love you. I stared at the screen, thumb hovering over the reply. I'm fine, I typed. It's work. I'll call when I can. I wanted to add more, something about how proud I was to be her sister, how much I missed being just Madison, not Detective Clark, not the outsider. But the job never left space for sentimentality, not when a child's life was on the line. My phone buzzed again, this time with a call from Lieutenant Rios. Clark, we just got a hit on a traffic cam. The blue sedan exited the highway near an industrial park north of the city. Units are converging now. You want point? I straightened, the old surge of purpose flooding through me. I'm en route. Tell them to wait for my signal. As I jogged to my car, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the driver's window, hair escaping its ponytail, tired eyes, but a face sharpened by resolve. At the party, I was a disappointment. Out here, I was the one they called when everything fell apart. And that, I realized, was enough. The drive north was all flashing lights and focused silence. I cut through traffic, radioing in every few minutes for updates. The industrial park loomed ahead, concrete warehouses, chain-link fences, a maze of access roads just outside Houston's urban sprawl. It was the kind of place that could swallow a car for hours, maybe days, if you didn't know what to look for. I arrived to find half a dozen patrol units already forming a perimeter. Officers were canvassing the few late-night workers still leaving the factories, but most of the area was deserted, shadows stretching under harsh sodium lights. Sergeant Nguyen flagged me down as I pulled up. "We've got the blue sedan," he said, gesturing to a spot behind an abandoned shipping office. The car was parked at an angle, one door still ajar. I approached cautiously, flashlight sweeping the interior. The smell of sweat and stale coffee hit me first. There was a small pink backpack on the passenger seat, Amy's, I guessed, with a faded unicorn keychain dangling from the zipper. On the floor, a crumpled receipt from a gas station near the Parkers' neighborhood. And, wedged under the seat, a child's shoe. A jolt of hope and fear ran through me. The abductor had moved fast, but he'd made mistakes. Every trace he left behind was a thread we could follow. "Print everything," I ordered. "And have forensics go over the car inch by inch. I want DNA, fibers, anything." Nguyen nodded, motioning to his team. "Do we have eyes on the suspect?" I asked. "Nothing yet. No witnesses saw anyone leave the car. We're sweeping the area now, checking every warehouse and alley." I scanned the layout, mind racing. The industrial park was a labyrinth, but it was also a trap. With the right pressure, we could corner him. Get K9 units and thermal imaging. And start knocking on every locked door. He won't get far on foot. As the team fanned out, I stood by the car for a moment, staring at the pink backpack. My mind flashed to every case file I'd ever read, every child whose face I'd memorized, every family waiting for news that never came. I wouldn't let Amy become just another picture on the wall. The radio crackled. Officer Reyes, from a few blocks away. "Clark, we've got movement in the loading dock behind Building 4. Looks like a man carrying something, maybe a blanket, or—" "Don't engage," I barked. "I'm on my way." I sprinted, the soles of my shoes slapping against cracked pavement. The loading dock was half-lit, paint peeling off metal doors, trash court in the corners. I saw two officers crouched behind a dumpster, their attention fixed on a figure moving along the wall. He was tall, wiry, dressed in jeans and a hoodie. In his arms, a bundle. For a split second, I caught sight of a small sneaker, dangling from the edge. I drew my weapon, keeping it low but ready. "Houston PD!" I shouted, voice ringing with authority. "Stop and show me your hands." He froze, glancing over his shoulder, eyes wide with the fear of a trapped animal. The bundle squirmed, and I heard a muffled whimper. "Amy." Time seemed to slow. The next 10 seconds would decide everything. I kept my tone steady, my stance solid, channeling every lesson I'd learned in 15 years on the force. "Put the child down," I commanded. "No one needs to get hurt tonight." For a moment, he hesitated. His grip tightened. My heart hammered, every muscle taut, ready for him to run, to lash out, to do something desperate. Then, as if some invisible line had finally been crossed, he set Amy gently on the ground and raised his hands. I advanced, keeping my focus locked on him, but my eyes flicked to Amy. She was crying, face streaked with dirt, but she was alive, whole. The moment our eyes met, something inside me unclenched. Officers surged forward, cuffing the man, whose hands shook as much from adrenaline as from fear. I knelt beside Amy, my voice gentle, careful not to startle her. "It's okay, sweetheart. You're safe now. I'm Madison. I'm here to help you." She nodded, hugging her knees to her chest, tears spilling silently down her cheeks. A paramedic arrived, checking her over, wrapping her in a foil blanket. I stayed beside her, holding her hand as she sobbed out broken fragments of her story. The suspect was led away, head bowed, as news vans began to swarm the edges of the parking lot, their cameras ready for the drama they'd been hoping to catch. For a moment, I let myself breathe. Amy was safe. This time, the story would end differently. I stood, stretching stiff muscles, and caught Nguyen's eye. He gave a sharp nod, approval, gratitude, maybe even a little awe. Moments like these were rare, but they were why I stayed in the job, why I endured every skeptical look, every family holiday that ended in silence or sarcasm. As I stepped back into the light, the buzz of the city seemed a little softer. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a message from Samantha. Whatever you're doing, I hope you know we're proud of you. For the first time in a long while, I let myself believe it might be true. Dawn broke over Houston as I steered my Explorer back into the city, exhaustion pulling at every muscle. The industrial park was behind me. The suspect, later identified as a repeat offender from another county, was in custody. Amy was safe, reunited with her parents at the hospital. For once, the system had worked. For once, the family would go home together. I pulled over on a quiet street, letting the engine idle while I watched the city wake up. School buses groaned at stoplights, parents in business suits grabbed coffee from drive-thrus, all unaware of the battle fought and won in the darkness. In moments like these, I always felt like a ghost, part of a world that few people ever really saw. The adrenaline was fading now, replaced by the familiar ache of fatigue. My hands trembled as I scrolled through my phone, news alerts already filling my notifications, headlines about their hero detective and a dramatic rescue in North Houston. My name, for once, wasn't a source of family embarrassment but something close to pride. It felt strange, almost unreal. I considered going home to sleep, but muscle memory steered me toward my father's house instead. The old white clapboard sat on a cul-de-sac lined with pecan trees. Inside, I could hear the faint blare of the morning news and the clink of dishes from the kitchen. I knocked, then let myself in. The familiar smell of coffee and toast drifted from the kitchen. My father was already dressed, bathrobe cinched tight, hair sticking up in tufts. He blinked at me through his glasses, confusion fading quickly as he recognized my uniform. "Madison? What are you doing here? It's not even 7. I didn't answer at first. Instead, I pulled out my phone, queued up the local news broadcast, and pressed play. The screen showed a replay of last night's events, police cars, flashing lights, and, in the center, me, rumpled, exhausted, carrying Amy to the waiting ambulance while cameras flashed and bystanders cheered. That's you?" Dad breathed, watching the screen as if he couldn't quite connect the woman on TV to the daughter standing in his kitchen. "Yeah, Dad." "That's me," I said, voice quieter than I'd intended. He turned to look at me, face crumpling with something I hadn't seen since I was a child, pure, unguarded emotion. "Madison, I didn't know. I mean, I thought you were." I held up a hand, stopping him. "I know what you thought. It's okay. I just wanted you to see. For years you all talked about me like I was lost, like I didn't know what I was doing. But this is who I am. This is what I do." He sat down heavily at the kitchen table, staring at his hands. The silence stretched, filled with the weight of years' worth of misunderstanding. For a long moment, we just listened to the news in the background, the anchor's voice detailing the facts of the case, the rescue, the suspect's capture. Finally, he looked up. "I'm proud of you, Madison. I should have said it sooner. I just didn't know how." I nodded, accepting the words, even if they came decades late. They mattered more than I wanted to admit. Before I left, Dad gripped my hand. His voice was rough. "Your mother would have been proud too, you know." The mention of Mom, gone almost 10 years now, hit me harder than I expected. I gave him a small, tired smile. "Thanks, Dad." Back in the car, I leaned my head against the steering wheel, letting relief and sadness mingle in the quiet. For so long, I'd fought for respect from people who couldn't see me. Maybe, just maybe, I'd finally broken through. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Jessica. "We saw you on TV." Tyler was so excited. He told all his friends his aunt is a hero. "Coffee soon?" My treat. I let myself laugh, really laugh, for the first time in weeks. The sound startled me, echoing in the empty car. There was still paperwork to do, statements to file, and a debrief with the department, but for now, I let myself bask in the quiet. I thought about Emma's family, safe, together, and about my own, slowly learning to see me as I truly was. Outside, the sky was streaked with the first gold of morning. I closed my eyes and let myself rest, just for a little while, letting the weight of the night finally lift. A few hours later, after a hurried shower and the world's strongest cup of coffee, I found myself at headquarters, the familiar hum of police radios and shuffling paperwork oddly comforting. The department buzzed with post-incident energy, officers trading stories about the rescue, reporters circling for statements, my captain grinning with rare, unguarded pride as he shook my hand in front of the squad. "You made us look good last night, Clark," he said, clapping me on the shoulder. "Not that I ever doubted you, but it's nice when the city sees what we already know." I managed a tired smile, ducking away from the cameras that had crowded the lobby all morning. I'd never liked being the center of attention. The real satisfaction came from quieter moments, the whispered thanks from a mother in a hospital hallway, the trembling smile of a child reunited with her parents. Those were the memories that stuck, long after the news fans had moved on. Still, there was a change in the way people looked at me. Officers I'd known for years, some of whom had barely hidden their skepticism about a woman running point on major cases, now nodded with something like respect. Even the rookies, eyes wide and eager, watched me as if I might have all the answers. I found myself feeling lighter, as if a weight I'd carried for years was finally slipping off my shoulders. After the debrief, I stepped outside for some air. The sky was bright, clouds reflecting off the glass towers of downtown Houston. I leaned against a concrete column, phone in hand, scrolling through messages I'd ignored all morning. Most were from the press or colleagues. But two stood out. First, from Jessica. "Mom says you're famous now. Samantha wants to do brunch. The kids want to see your badge. Dad's making pancakes. He says you're not allowed to miss family breakfast this Sunday." And the second, from Samantha herself. "I'm sorry for not understanding before. Tyler drew a picture of you as a superhero. He says you're his favorite person in the world. I think you're mine too. Love you, Maddie." I stood for a long time, phone pressed to my chest, letting the warmth of their words settle in my bones. For so many years, I'd built walls, protecting myself from their doubt, their gossip, their silent disapproval. Now, piece by piece, Those walls seemed to be coming down. Back at my apartment, a small space above a bakery in Montrose, cluttered with old case files, dog-eared novels, and a cactus I always forgot to water, I sat by the window, watching people wander the sunlit streets. It struck me how different the world looked when you stopped bracing for disappointment. A knock at the door broke my reverie. Jessica's face appeared in the glass, her smile as bright as ever. "I brought pastries," as she said, holding up a pink box. "And questions. Lots of questions." We sat at my tiny kitchen table, the smell of cinnamon rolls filling the air. She talked about the rescue, how the news had made Tyler and Emma shout with pride, how Dad had called every relative to tell them his daughter was the one who saved the day. For the first time in a long while, there was no trace of pity in her voice, just genuine admiration. "Was it always this hard?" as she asked quietly, eyes searching mine. "Keeping it all from us?" I nodded, feeling old wounds begin to heal. It was easier than explaining why I missed birthdays, or why I couldn't talk about my work. "I didn't want you all to worry, or to be disappointed when I had to run out in the middle of dinner for a case." Jessica reached across the table, squeezing my hand. "I get it now. I really do. And I'm proud of you, Madison. We all are." Her words were balm to old scars. I realized, in that sun-drenched moment, that acceptance doesn't always come wrapped in applause or headlines. Sometimes it's a sister's quiet understanding, or a nephew's crown drawing of his aunt as a caped crusader. That evening, as the city glowed with the promise of summer, I received one more message, a photo of Amy Parker and her family, smiling in their living room, a hand-drawn "Thank you, Detective Clark," a sign taped to the wall behind them. Tears stung my eyes as I stared at the screen. For all the years I'd chased approval, for all the lonely nights and missed celebrations, this was enough. More than enough. It was everything.